Hello, everybody, and welcome to Starting Small Music. I'm Justin McCormick, and you're about to hear a conversation with an artist, musician, and music industry professional on their journey and how they got to where they are today. At Starting Small, we like to take you on a journey uncovering the untold stories of your favorite songs and artists. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Just keep a smile on your face and it'll be okay. Try not to be bitter, you gotta do it either way. Keep a smile on your face and it'll be okay. So when life throws a jab, you gotta duck out of the way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Starting Small Music Podcast. Today we have artist and songwriter James McNair with us. How you doing today, James?
I'm good, Justin. How are you, bud?
I'm doing good. So getting right into your story, you grew up in South Carolina. What was your childhood like?
So I grew up in a small town called Aiken, South Carolina, and it was super tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody, the same cliche small town-esque you would say, but it's a town that's about 20 minutes from Augusta, Georgia. So we've a lot of golf, a lot of horses, a lot of retired folks come down, but my dad's been in the golf business for probably I guess now it's almost 40 years, and my grandfather did the same thing. So he runs a golf course in my hometown. So I grew up working for him and going to a small school when I grew up, and then played golf and got into music at about 7 years old. Found this old guitar in my grandma's attic that was just an old Sears, believe it or not, it was a Sears Roebuck catalog guitar. So back in the day, they would send these big catalogs out and you could go through and find what you wanted for Christmas or whatever and order it. And it was basically like a piece of plywood, basically, that was painted red and had these pickups that were probably not any better than like a bad microphone kind of pickups. And so I found this guitar, and I guess it was my uncle's, and it was from the 70s. And I begged my grandma. I was like, I can't use this without an amp. It was an electric, and she was like, okay, we'll go, I'll take you. And I, 7 years old, and she takes me down to the music store, and we got this little Ibanez amp. And then I just started making a bunch of racket. But, I'm a little bit older, so I'm 34. Mm-hmm. So in those days, it was like we were in the heat of alternative rock and rock, and I was super into classic rock and all that stuff. So the good part about that is bands like Bush and Nirvana, a lot of the songs were easy to learn how to play with power chords. It was only two fingers, instead of learning the, 3-finger C and G, like the open chords that we use a lot in country. I was just doing power chords. And Lenny Kravitz, I think, was probably one of the first songs I learned how to play. Fly Away, I think it was. But that's kind of the gist, man. Yeah, I grew up in Aiken and played golf on the golf team, and tried to stay out of trouble. I wasn't the best kid, we got bored a lot in my hometown, and there was a lot of early beer drinking going on. Sorry, Mom, I'm sure she'll hear this, but we had a good time, man. And to be honest, I didn't really get serious with music until I was in high school, and it wasn't as serious in a songwriting aspect. It was more so, hey, I want to learn this song and learn how to sing it and be able to get from front to back without messing up. And then I would start jamming with guys, and we would start these little garage bands and be way too loud. But I think at one point we had a band that we could get through like 4 or 5 songs. So my dad would let us, they would have these like 4th of July things at the course that he runs in my hometown, and he would let us come play, and we would just arrange the set like we'd have those 5 songs, and then the rest were jams, everybody just be jams. So each song was like a 20-minute version, but people loved it and people embraced it. I think, it's kind of cool to see a lot of kids now, instead of being on iPads or whatever else, they're on that. But I feel like music, and I've been seeing, I don't know if you have too, but there's a lot of music schools out called like school. I don't know if it's called School of Rock, or it's kind of based around that movie, but they enroll their kids there, and then they learn how to play music and learn the song. And I thought that was so cool, man, that there's actually people out there that actually want to learn how to play an instrument and sing, but also be able to play in a band. And so that's kind of just my story in a really, small nutshell there. But
For sure. Now, before you even find the guitar, is there any like albums or artists that stick out that you remember resonating with the kid as a kid that kind of drew you to music, you feel like?
absolutely. Yeah, my dad, he's not musically talented at all, but he has a really good ear and he's kind of a music snob. And so in college, he used to collect, he collects all sorts of stuff, but he loved collecting vinyls. So I was really, really lucky as a kid that we had this record player, and he taught me how to use it very early on. And hey, don't mess up the needle, and hey, this is how this works, and you press power here for the receiver and all that. But boxes and boxes, man, it's just unbelievable records. I mean, I loved all the Leonard Skinner stuff, but he was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, so I'd wear out those records. Zeppelin one, like all of the just the heavy hitting kind of classic rock singer songwriter albums too. Like shoot, Jim Croce would be one that we had his stuff. James Taylor, Van Morrison. I mean, all these just very, very amazing songwriters and bands. And so I remember 5, 6, 7 years old, not only playing his records, but also going to like back in those days, I guess it might have been Sam Goody, but one of those kind of stores in the mall. And I'd save my grass mowing money and I'd find this album like a Pearl Jam that's coming out or whatever it may be. And I would go and I'd save my money for like a month and go and buy that album. And they were all on cassettes then, and so we had a cassette player and I would just sit in front of those 2 Yamaha speakers, man, and just drive my mom nuts. But early on, I would say it was a lot of that classic rock stuff and Bruce Springsteen, but also very heavily influenced in the alternative rock and rock side, like Oasis, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Green Day, like all the kind of stuff that was, in the heat of the mid-90s. I was super into. Yeah.
It's cool you talk about a lot of that older like kind of rock stuff and also singer-songwriter stuff, because I feel like a lot of that stuff could have gotten pushed to country radio today if it was released.
Oh, 100%, man. You're dead. I laugh all the time. I see, I was just out with Hardy this weekend and just with his project and his artistry and watching the crowds react. I was joking with him, and I think it's very true that a lot of his rock stuff is based around early 2000s, like even late 90s riffs. But the kids that are following country and following him as an artist are too young to remember that music. Rock radio's dead. So, being 34, I would flip on a rock radio station in 96, 97, 98. And like, we were just, force fed, honestly, all this great rock music. But now it's gone. So when these kids in high school or early college age kids hear someone like a Hardy, they probably, if their dad said, well, this sounds kind of like Alice in Chains or Stone Temple Pilots, are like, who? So I feel like that's kind of rejuvenating the rock side, which I love because I love that music. And I think it's really cool that it's coming back. Like I've been listening to Austin Snell some and his stuff is like that. I think there is, Nate Smith, who I work with some, and Bailey, they all have that. I would say just a hinting to, it's not as hard. Some of their stuff is more, it is the rock, but it's not as hard as like an Alice in Chains or a Metallica or something. Hardy, some of his stuff can be, but no, it's amazing. And I think that's why I love country music so much, that we're able to do that,
For sure. Now, coming out of high school, you decided to go to the University of Alabama. What was that decision like? Were you considering at one point just going and doing music right out of high school? Were you going to college for your parents? What was that decision like?
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, I was actually going to college for my parents, to be honest. And that's nail on the head. But I was also going to college for me, man. I think I wanted to get the heck out of my hometown. And so my aunt at the time, she had gone to Alabama, and ever since I was, super young, she would be like, you need to go to Alabama, Roll Tide. And I always used to laugh it off because both my parents went to Clemson University and played sports there. My dad played golf and my mom played tennis. So for me, college was always the goal. You go in, and it's their generation, man. It's like you go in, you make good grades, and you have a sport, and whether the sport takes you there or not, you make good grades and you go to college and you get a job. Like, that was the structure. And I think it wasn't a question whether I was going to go to college. It was just where. So I didn't make the best grades in high school. Like I said, I was kind of a wild man. I was class clown of a graduating class of about 500 people. So I wear that badge with honor. A lot of stuff, that went on. But the funny thing is, I was playing a lot of golf in high school, and we were partying a lot. So it was one of those things that my GPA was just all over the place. And so going into my senior year, my GPA was so bad that I basically had to like pull a 3.8 or a 3.9 to even get my GPA up to like pass the 3.0. And my parents were so mad because it wasn't for lack of, it's not like I'm not intelligent. And it was just, I didn't like the babysitting aspect of high school. I felt like a lot of the information I never would need. And we don't have to get into that, but I ended up actually applying myself because it scared me that, oh my gosh, if I don't make these grades, I'm not going to get out of my hometown. So I ended up making, I think, a 3.9 my senior year to raise my GPA. And my SAT wasn't that great or whatever, but the only big school I could get into at the time was Alabama, believe it or not. And that's where I wanted to go, though. We visited, and I was like, this is the perfect distance away. It's about 5.5 hours from my hometown. And I didn't really want to go to University of South Carolina at the time. I couldn't get into Clemson. And there were some other schools around, but I wanted to kind of distance myself and create a new life for myself outside of my hometown. And that was my decision to go to Alabama.
For sure. Now, were you writing during your time at Alabama? And do you think that going to college actually gave you a lot more material to write about during that time too?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So that was kind of the story when I really got serious about writing songs. When I went to Alabama, I had a roommate that ended up, I guess he joined a frat, and then he wanted to room with someone else, and they were going to like do a roommate switch. And I was like, dude, whatever. So he moved out, but they never put someone back in my dorm room. So at the time, I had met some buddies that had played guitar and stuff. So I put an amp in there, and I had an electric, and then I bought a drum set, and I learned how to play drums. And we would literally just put like pillowcases on top of my drum kit, and I had brushes, and we would just go in there and jam, and no one cared, which was wild. Like, obviously everyone in that dorm I was in, it was Patey Hall in Alabama. It was like the worst dorm on campus. So everyone was partying and rolling kegs up in there anyway. They're like, oh, we got a free band. Great. No one's trying to study in that dorm. So it worked out. So when he moved out, and so I didn't have any pressure of, oh, I need to be quiet. Like, if the guitar was right there and something would come to my head, like a riff or something, I could pick it up and, do what I wanted to do. So I ended up really reading about the structure of songs. I had written some songs in high school that were just bad, like had no structure, like 30-second intros and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But when I was at Alabama, I really tried to focus on, okay, what makes this song great? And I wasn't like reading like how to write songs. I wasn't like going on Google and, hey, what's the structure? I was just listening to stuff I really liked. And I was like, how long did it take to get to the first verse? How long was the verse? What was the rhyme? Like, okay, so we rhymed this, this, and this, and then it was a pre-chorus. And then what do I like about this chorus? Is he jumping the octave, or what is he, he or she doing here that I'm loving? So I just kind of dove into that and started writing songs and getting serious about writing songs in my dorm room. And then by the time I left Alabama, I had like 2 or 3 songs that I wrote by myself that, looking back now, obviously as a professional, I'm like, they weren't that great, but they were better than anything I had ever done. And I remember going home and playing them, for my parents and stuff and some friends. And they're like, Dude, actually, this is pretty good. Like, there's some cool melodies here, and the idea's not bad. Like, I think you might have something here with, writing and singing your own songs. So that's kind of how that came about.
So you end up moving to Nashville in 2013, and only 2 years into town, you signed with Tree Vibes Music. How does that come about?
Man, I would say, looking at it now, I just hit my 10-year mark last week. I would say a lot of timing and good fortune, but I also really, really, really got out there and hit the ground running. I didn't know anyone when I moved to Nashville. I knew there was a girl that I dated in college, and she had a friend that would come visit her in college, and I got to know him. He's a great guy, and I found him on Facebook, and he lived in Nashville at the time. And like I said, I hadn't talked to him because that so much time had passed by the time I was in Alabama to the time that I had moved to Nashville. So when I hadn't talked to him, man, I would say in 6 or 7 years. So it was kind of out on a limb, And so I went through my Facebook. At the time, it would let you, like, on a directory, like, who do you know that lives in Nashville? Like, you put the location of the city and it would show your friends. Yeah. And like, he was like one of them on Facebook. And so I just like messaged him when DMs weren't that popular, that if you're getting a DM back in those days, they were like, oh God, what's going on? How's grandma doing? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not one of those kind of networking things as it is now. And I was like, hey, man, I see that you live in Nashville. I really am thinking about just coming and visiting. I know it's the music capital of the world, and I have a band back home, and I just really think I need to come visit. He's like, well, man, I don't really have the best spot to, I don't have a guest room or anything. I'm renting this house over in Edge Hill or wherever it was. And he's like, I've got a couch though. I was like, dude, couch is fine. I was like, I know this is crazy. I haven't seen you in a while, but man, last time we hung out, we had a good time. Let's go and drink some beers and do it. And so he was like, come on up. And so the next like couple weeks, I went up there and I stayed for like 2 or 3 days on a weekend. And man, it was 2012 at the time, in the fall, and just the city was just electric, man. There was just a feeling about it, just the creativity. And I went out and I went to a couple writers rounds, and I went and saw some shows, and I just felt, I don't know how to explain it. I'm a big, universe and feelings guy and energy guy, right? Like I feed off of that. And I just felt something that was just pulling me, like where I needed to be was here. And so I ended up, hanging out that weekend, and he introduced me to some folks. He works for Taylor Swift. He was in her, which is crazy because he's rocking and rolling too. He was working in her mailroom, like fulfilling Christmas orders for Taylor, and now he's like part of her like management team. Like he's in it. So it's wild to see where people go. So I came back home and I told my parents, I was like, hey, I need to get to Nashville ASAP. And at the time, I think I was having a quarter life crisis because my dad was trying to put me on salary to work as an assistant superintendent for his golf course. And that word salary kind of felt very confining, and I felt like, oh man, that's a big word, like salary. That's going to keep me here. Like, this is going to be my job. And so I kind of got cold feet with that. And after I visited Nashville, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. Like, I'm going to go up there, So I basically sold pretty much everything I could sell. I had a boat that I had bought with some graduation money in high school and some other odds and ends, and then got on Craigslist and applied to some jobs, and then got into I'm trying to think, I got an email from his name was BJ Parker at the time, the superintendent of Brentwood Country Club. Mm-hmm. And he was like, man, your experience is more than anyone we've had, because I'd worked for my dad for 5-6 years in the golf business, and or as a superintendent. And so he's like, listen, I can only offer you an entry level position. Like, you're probably going to be annoyed at who you're going to have to work with, but I
Yeah.
can't just bump you right in. I have guys that have worked, for me for 5 or 6 years that are already assistants, and you're just going to have to work for them. I'm like, dude, I'll take anything. Whatever gets me up here where I can justify, hey, I have this certain amount of savings and I make, 10, 15 an hour for you. I could somehow figure this out. And so I went and moved up March 1st after, selling everything, pulled a little U-Haul, and I found this house on Craigslist that ended up being just a dump, man. It was the whole story. Like, we could never find, I was paying the guy that it was basically a sublease, and he was going to school at like Vanderbilt or something. And I was paying him rent. And he said he was paying it, but he wasn't paying it to anybody. Okay. He was just pocketing it because they hadn't talked to the owners of this house. The owners of the house were like in Saudi Arabia or something sketchy, right? Like, so little did I know, he moved and I couldn't get in touch. So literally I paid him rent for like 6 months that he just pocketed. And then we took over the house after he left, and we're trying to track down the owner so we could pay rent. Couldn't track him down, went to the management house, and there's nothing, or the management company, and it had gone bust. There's papers all over the floor. We're like, are we living in, like, what is going on? It was literally like a freaking sci-fi movie, man. So anyway, so that's how I got there, and I lived in that place for a bit, and then I found another house, and I just hit the ground running, man. I played so many writers rounds, everything I can get my hands on I was in. I met a lot of people at the bar, to be honest, when Whiskey Jam was like in its first or second year of going, and it was kind of the hot spot, that and Tin Roof. And I was out and I was getting seen, and I was playing a ton of writers rounds and trying to write with anyone I could. And I just kind of networked and worked my way into eventually meeting people with publishing deals, and we would write some pretty good stuff. And then the publisher would say, well, who's this guy McNair on this song? And so I got to know some publishers in town, and I can't skip this step, but BMI was really good to me when I first moved into town. I met Leslie Roberts, and I met Bradley Collins when he was there. And I also met a guy that helped me out a good bit that used to be there. And it's too early in the morning. I can't believe I'm going to forget his name. Mark Mason. Sorry. And Mark was instrumental in getting me that first publishing deal. And I'll tell you this, and for everybody listening, he was extremely hard on me in the best of ways, though, man. So he would literally, he started meeting with me, and he's like, play me some songs. And I would play him like 5 or 6 songs, and a couple of them would be demos somehow that I've found, like, hey, I could pay $100 for this demo. And a lot of them were work tapes. And he would literally be like, this one's, I really like this one. The rest, And he would keep it, and he would put it in a folder, and he'd say, hey, 3 months from now, I want you to come play me 5 more songs. And so 3 months would go by, and we'd schedule a meeting, and I'd go in and we'd talk life, and I'd play him 5 more songs, and he would trash 4 of them, and he'd pluck 1 and throw it in there. And so we did that for about a year and a half of 3-month stints. And near the end, I was like, I was kind of getting frustrated. I was like, man, I'm writing with all these guys that have deals. This guy got a deal. It's like, what am I doing? He's like, dude, I promise you, I would rather have you be ready, and I'm not putting my name behind you unless you're ready for meetings, And I was like, okay, man, I trust you, but like, I'm getting frustrated, But at the time you want it, it's the today we're in, man. It's instant gratification, it's just the times that we live in, So at the end of the day, I freaking, I've just gotten my headspace of just, nose to the grindstone. This is how it's working. And then after the last time we met, he was like, dude, you're ready. And he had the folder, and it was like 5 songs from the past almost 2 years that were his favorites. And so he started setting me up with some meetings, and one of my first ones was with Kelly King, that does Brothers Osborne and a few others, and she was amazing, and she loved the stuff, and she's like, I would love to sign you today, but right now, we just don't have the resources. There are small companies, like we've got too many writers right now, but I'm going to keep an eye on you. And I was like, okay, at least that's honest. And I met with a few other people, and I had a couple little people sniffing around offers, but they were horrible, dude. Like there was one that was like, all right, I'm going to give you $12,000, a year, and I want 100% of your publishing and all this stuff. And at the time I was like, oh, maybe this is my opportunity. But then I would take it, around, and they'd be like, dude, if you sign that, you're crazy. Just wait, like keep working, keep grinding. I'm like, all right. And so I got to know Tom Luteran at Sony ATV I was writing with Matt Chase, Murphy Elmore, John Langston, like that whole crowd was signed over there at the time. And we hit it off, and he told me around that time, because he had asked me, he's like, dude, what's the deal with your, like, have you found a deal? Like, I was like, man, I'm taking meetings, but I haven't really had anything that's come across, that I would want to take. And he's like, I'll tell you what, we're super busy right now. We have like 200 writers. Like, it's just crazy. But if you find a small company to team up, I'll sign you tomorrow. So then I'm like, my mind's like, all right, here we go. I got my homework, let me go find a smaller company. And it just, the stars lined up, man. It's a timing thing. Mark literally emails me like a week after I'd had that conversation with Tom Luteran. It was like, hey man, Brian Kelly is starting this new publishing company with Florida Georgia Line called Tree Vibes. Like, are you cool if I give him your info? I said, yeah, it's awesome. Totally. So he emailed me, and it was like this crazy like email that came in as spam at first, because it was like this like Tree Vibes without the E. So it just looked, the computer must have not recognized it. And then I realized who it was. I was, oh my gosh, this is Brian. Okay. Hey, can you send me some songs? So I'd send him 3 songs, and he'd be like, dude, these are amazing. Send me 3 more. So I sent him like 12 songs. And after like he kept telling me to send them, I'm like, in my head, I was with Combs actually one day. He's like, dude, you're getting trolled, man. Someone's like stealing your song. They're messing with you. And I'm like, oh no. But I said, I promise, dude, like Mark at BMI told me he was going to contact me. And Luke's like, I don't know, dude, this sounds catfishy to me, because he didn't have a deal either. So he was equally excited for me at the time, but it was BK. And it turned out to be him. And he had a guy named Dane Schmidt helping him at the time. It was George Schmidt's brother running, and he was running the company. So I linked up Tom to Dane after I'd sent a ton of songs to Dane and wrote with Jordan some, and they hit it off. And then, long story short, that was in the summer. I was signed November 1st, 2015. So that's how it kind of all came about.
That's awesome. And everything ended up working out. You had a major smash with Luke Combs, one of your first hits, Lovin On You. What do you remember about the day you wrote that one, and what went into that song?
So what I remember, it was the first weekend that Luke had his own bus as just him as the artist. Like, he was out with all his band guys, and we used to write out there. We'd send them out and be like, y'all go find something to do. We're writing. But he had his first just for him bus, and he was super in love with his wife, Nicole, and they weren't married at the time. And he was like, man, isn't this awesome? Like, we got a sold out show tonight. And I think it was in Kansas City. He was like, sold out show tonight. I got my own bus. My buddies are out here. Like, we were just in a really, really good mood. Right. And it was in the morning. And I remember one of us got on that groove, and the song spilled out in like 45 minutes. And it felt good, and we laid it down on the work tape, and dude, we didn't think a second about it, dude. We put our phones in our pockets, and I think we might have like maybe gone and played golf at whatever we did that day when Thomas was out. Something fun, I'm sure. Didn't think a thing about it. And then he went in and cut it, after probably 6 months from that day. And they cut the fire out of it. And we still didn't know if it was going to be a single or anything. We just knew the cut. He absolutely just demolished it. And with the horns and stuff, we were like, this is like straight up honky tonk and just fun. And I was like, I love it. But then he started playing it live, and Justin, and that's when it just like took a whole new life. And so when he would see the crowd reaction to it, he would always say like, dude, this would be a great single, just because of the crowd loves it. It's a singable chorus. So I remember I went on his bachelor party, and I was just like hanging out in his man cave, and I think we're shooting like some plastic basketball game or whatever. And he just nonchalant comes over and he's like, "Hey man, Lovin On You's the next single," and just goes up and shoots a shot, and walks away. Like, and I'm like over here like, "Oh my God, my life's about to change," like, and he just that's who the guy is. He just nonchalant tells me, walks away, and I'm like sitting there in shock. And then, like I said, it rips up the charts and hangs up there at #1 for a while. And it was great timing in my life because it was during the pandemic and none of us knew what was going on. And honestly, I was super burnt out at the time, man. I'd been out with Florida Georgia Line for 2 years, every single weekend writing songs. I had a couple singles, but they fizzled out. Like, I was at the point where I was like, man, am I ever going to get something on the radio that works? And so it was a perfect timing for my life. And I'm so blessed. I definitely think it's a God thing. And I'm also blessed that Luke chose it as a single. Cause I mean, you know how his albums are. He could literally go like this and throw a dart and, and they'll be a hit, he cuts great songs. So yeah, that was a blessing, man, for sure.
No doubt. Now you're coming off, you just released a new single, Fly on the Wall, and now you're going out on tour with Luke Combs. He's doing a really cool thing, having a writer's round to open the show. Are you excited to go out there, not only to promote the new single, but also play some of your hits in front of huge crowds?
Absolutely. So that was another one of those nonchalant Luke things. I'm down at the beach with him and we're writing and we're just eating breakfast or something. And he doesn't ask. He's like, "Hey man, so you're going to come out to Europe and, I think I'm going to have you, Ray, and Drew open the show." And I was like, "For the tour?" He was like, "Yeah, for the tour, So he ended up doing that. And I was like, "Yeah, of course I'll do it." And I've been pumped ever since. And it's a full circle thing, right? I mean, we were all playing writers rounds and we were playing Belcourt Taps like way back in the day, Luke and I, to nobody.
Yeah.
So for him to ask me, I'm super, super thankful. And we're just going to have fun. I've never been overseas. So that's part of the luster of it, is we're going to go over and like actually see some historic places and play some golf and probably write some with that crew. I'd imagine. I would think that he would want to write. And so it's just going to be a month of craziness, man, to be honest. And I think what we're all going to do is play our own artist stuff, because a lot of our hits are with him. So we can't go up there. I can't go up there and play Lovin On You, and then he has to get up, play it again. So it's probably going to be a lot of our own stuff. And so I'm super, super grateful and very, very appreciative for him to give us this opportunity, because it is big. It's probably the biggest thing, artist wise, that I've had as far as getting my music out there. So
for sure. Now I like to close my interviews by asking, what's a piece of advice you've learned along your journey that you'd give to the younger songwriters and artists out there?
So I like to change my answer on this one a lot, because they're all, I don't like to give the stock answer. So let me see what I'm feeling this morning, because there's so many ones that I've heard, that I like to repeat and I always still take with me. But I would say I was talking with someone last night. I went to a birthday party and he comes up to me. He's like, "Man, you're doing so well." I was like, "How are you doing?" He's like, "I'm doing great." And we're just talking music stuff. And he's like, "Man, this town has told me no more than my mom did when I was, when I was wanting two desserts, just kind of funny jokes about that." And I would say that anyone that's starting out and is, especially in Nashville, is you really just have to have an alligator thick skin. People aren't gonna like your music, but some people are, and that's the thing. You have to just take the no's and keep on going, because when the yes does come, it'll be the right yes. And it's brutal. You're going to hear no a lot, and you're going to second guess yourself. But the longer that you stay down and keep your head down, and I'm in the same boat, as far as I'll write a song that I feel like is a hit or a no-brainer, and I won't hear anything. And it does. You go home and I'm like, am I losing? It's like some days I feel like I've never written a song in my life. And then some weeks I go and I feel like I'm in a rhythm and I'm rocking and rolling. But that's what I would say to anyone coming into town is just work. You're going to hear no's, but I promise the right yes will come along, and it'll be a better deal than if you try to force something or make something work. Let the universe work for you. Put good out and you'll get good back. and just work and keep your head down.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment, and check out my music on all streaming platforms at Justin McCormick. See you guys next time.